So far, many people around the world have printed fake currency notes of different countries and have been caught, either because the quality of their notes wasn't good or they got busted due to a tip-off. But today's story is about a man who made the most perfect counterfeit American dollars ever seen. This man is called the king of the fake currency world. The reason behind this title is that he printed almost $250 million in fake dollars, and they looked exactly like the real ones, making them nearly impossible to detect. This man was printing the notes in a garage located in a deserted area. He would have never been caught by the police, but one deal messed everything up, and he got busted. This story is a masterclass in how this man printed such high fake notes, how he eventually got caught, and how before getting arrested, he became a millionaire through fake currency. This is the story of America's most notorious counterfeiter, Frank Bourassa, who was born in Montreal, Canada. Frank started his criminal career at the age of just 12, when he was in 6th grade. It all began when he noticed that some students at his school used to steal expensive clothes, hide them in their bags, and bring them to school. That's when Frank saw an opportunity. He began buying these clothes from the students and started selling them to other students, making some money in the process. He didn't care that it was against school rules or illegal. He only cared that he was getting those expensive stolen clothes and making money. That's why every week he was earning a decent amount of cash. According to Frank, this money gave him a sense of freedom, and he kept expanding his illegal activities. By the age of 15, he was expelled from school. After being kicked out of school, Frank also left his home. To survive, he started looking for a job and eventually found work as a mechanic in a garage. However, even this job became another opportunity for him to return to illegal work. He started stealing car parts and selling them outside. For the next 5 years, he worked in various garages, surviving by stealing and selling car parts. But by the age of 20, he decided to give up all illegal activities. He now had enough knowledge and experience about cars, so he decided to start a small manufacturing unit where he would produce car brake pads. Frank's idea worked, and his business started doing really well. But since he had to work 20 hours a day continuously, the stress took a toll on him, both physically and mentally. Due to this extreme stress, Frank began experiencing panic attacks and eventually had a nervous breakdown. When he consulted a doctor, he was told that his health was starting to deteriorate. Despite having a profitable business, Frank was forced to sell it. The money he got from selling his manufacturing unit was enough to travel the world for 2 years. After 2 years of traveling, Frank decided to return to Canada, but he also made up his mind that he would never earn money the legal way again. He believed that earning money legally took too much hard work and gave very little return. So, he started growing and selling marijuana. At that time, the marijuana business was booming in Canada, making it easy to earn money through weed. But, as they say, every illegal act gets caught one day, and the same happened to Frank. In 2006, Frank was arrested for selling marijuana. He was sentenced to 3 months in prison. And that's when the birth of the world's most elite counterfeiter took place, the man who would later print the finest fake notes. After being released from jail, Frank was again looking for a way to make money. Though he knew many people in the world of crime, he was unsure what to do. If he went into the cocaine business, he could get sent to jail again. Cocaine is a serious drug, and the punishment for it is harsh, and he didn't want to go back to prison. By 2008, one day while sitting in a pub drinking, an idea came to his mind. Frank thought, to start any business, you first have to find a product, then customers to sell it to, and then keep track of all the accounting, which is very difficult. Frank wanted to make money, but wanted to stay away from the hassle of running a business. That's when he decided he would print his own money. Although he had a plan now, Frank knew nothing about making counterfeit notes. So, he decided he would print American dollars instead of Canadian dollars. According to Frank, printing American dollars was easier because they were still made of paper, not polymer, and they were accepted almost everywhere in the world. That made printing and circulating them much easier. But since Frank had no knowledge of counterfeit currency, he started researching the details of real notes on US government websites. He would visit these websites from different internet cafes each time to avoid suspicion. Eventually, he collected all the information he needed to print fake notes that looked exactly like the real ones. To make American dollars, the required Paper was 75% cotton and 25% linen, and the notes had specific security features. The information about the printing machines used was also available on US official websites. The first major challenge Frank faced was finding a manufacturer who could give him paper that felt just like real currency. Most counterfeiters get caught because of the paper. Its feel is the first giveaway. If Frank didn't print on the right 75% cotton, 25% linen paper, the notes would immediately be detected. Frank created a fake identity and introduced himself as Thomas Moore, an executive from a fake stationery company called Lettershop. He emailed a paper manufacturing company and said he needed special paper for his client, a mix of cotton and linen. Everyone knew that this kind of paper was used to print American dollars. One such company, Crane & Co., had been producing currency paper for the US government for over 50 years. As soon as they received Frank's email, they replied, "We know you're trying to print fake currency on this paper." Frank stopped contacting them immediately. His difficulties kept increasing, but he didn't give up. He believed there must be some corrupt paper company in the world that could give him the special paper he needed. He changed his fake name to Jackson Maxwell and posed as an executive from a trading and investment company. This time, he emailed another paper company. In this mail, he wrote that he wanted to print $20 and $40 bonds, for which he needed rag paper that couldn't be counterfeited. Finally, in 2009, he found a paper company named Arja Wiggins Security, based in Switzerland. In the email, Frank also requested that the paper include a security strip with USA 20 written on it, and a watermark as well. Although Arja Wiggins was ready to print the paper, they didn't have the required equipment for watermark and strip printing. So Frank ordered a $15,000 cylinder printing term from Germany and had it shipped to the Arja Wiggins facility in Switzerland. At that time, the person on the US dollar note was Andrew Jackson, the 7th US president. If Frank had asked a US-based company to make a watermark of Andrew Jackson, he would have been caught instantly. But since Arja Wiggins was based in Switzerland, Andrew Jackson's face was just another portrait to them. Even if they knew who he was, they couldn't tell if it was from a currency note. Eventually, Frank received sample paper sheets printed with a security strip and watermark, and they were perfect. After getting the samples, Frank placed an order for $100 notepaper and started working out the math, which helped him realize that he could now print $250 million. He could print up to $1 million. He was going to sell each fake $20 note for a real $6, which meant he was going to turn fake $250 million into real $75 million. And then he would never have to work again in his life. Frank had cleared the first hurdle, but now the most important task in front of him was to arrange a printing press. And here, luck favored him. Frank had a friend who worked in a professional printing company and had also been to jail once. Frank felt that this person could be useful to him, so he discussed getting a printing machine with him. Frank's friend told him that for this job, he would need a Heidelberg offset printer, and although this wasn't the printer used by the US Treasury to print notes, which meant no one would suspect them, it could still print just like it. Along with the printing machine, he also needed a paper cutting machine, plate dies, and inkjet printers to print serial numbers on the notes. Arranging all this cost Frank another $300,000, which he had earned from the marijuana business. Now, Frank was just waiting for the paper to arrive so he could start printing fake notes as soon as possible. One day, he got a call from the shipping dock saying that his consignment had arrived, and he could come and collect it. Frank now had another worry. If he went directly to pick up the consignment, someone might find out, and the police might already be watching him. So he took a binocular and watched the shipment for 3 days to assess any danger around it. Frank was constantly worried that the Arja Wiggins company might have suspected something and informed the police, and that they were just waiting to catch him red-handed while collecting the container. But even after watching for 3 days, no one showed up. Anyway, now it was time to move the shipment to another location. Frank loaded the shipment onto a box truck and hired a man to drive behind the truck in a car. As soon as the truck reached a single-lane highway, the man in the car acted like his car had broken down, which blocked the traffic behind them for 20 minutes, giving the truck enough time to get away. Frank had done this on purpose, so that if someone was following the truck, they would be left behind, because he didn't want to take any chances. The most surprising part was that Frank still didn't take the truck to his location. Instead, he had it parked in a parking lot, where it remained under Frank's surveillance for the next 3 days. During this time, Frank kept hiring different people to keep an eye on the truck. People were starting to get suspicious that something illegal was going on, but no one knew exactly what was happening. Anyway, after 3 more days, it was time to move the container to a second location, so Frank loaded it onto another truck. During this phase, Frank was extremely cautious. First, he checked all tracking devices, and then took the container to a garage he had rented from a farmer. Frank had set up the entire printing press and equipment in this garage, but the farmer who rented him the place didn't know anything about what was going on inside. Once everything was ready, Frank finally began printing the fake notes, and for the next 5 months, he would print notes at night and return home. By morning. As the printing continued, Frank started to feel that he was becoming rich, but during these 5 months, he didn't circulate a single dollar into the market. He wanted to print the full $250 million first, and then start selling them. After 5 months of printing, he successfully printed $250 million, and then asked his criminal friend to bring customers who would buy the fake notes. Now his friend began contacting various drug dealers who sold cocaine, but when he asked them if they wanted to buy fake notes, they refused and also warned him to be careful. Hearing this from smugglers shook Frank. He started thinking that what he was doing was even more serious than drug smuggling. Otherwise, they wouldn't have warned him like that. But Frank had made up his mind that he wouldn't give up at any cost. Now he had a mountain of fake notes in front of him, and he needed someone who would buy them. Eventually, he found 4 buyers. These 4 buyers were import-export businessmen who wanted to sell the money in other countries. But this was a very risky plan, because if these notes got caught in Africa, Asia, or Europe, the police could trace them back to Canada. Another problem was that the buyers were only purchasing $100 to $5,000 at a time. These small quantities were increasing Frank's troubles. However, slowly, the buyers began to understand the quality of Frank's fake notes, and they started placing orders ranging from $100,000 to $1 million. But even at this pace, it was going to take a long time for Frank to move all that fake money. During this time, Frank met a man named Eric Lefebvre, who used to buy and sell stolen goods. For the past 2 years, Eric had been selling stolen trucks to an undercover police agent. Eric didn't know the agent was undercover, so he asked him if he wanted to buy fake notes. The undercover agent immediately agreed. This agent placed an order for $100,000 in fake notes, which Frank handed over to Eric, and Eric delivered them to the agent. The undercover agent was very impressed with the quality of the notes and asked for another $100,000, to which Eric agreed. But this time, Frank wasn't feeling confident. He felt that something bad was going to happen. Still, Frank gave the fake notes to Eric, who took them to a friend's house. But Frank had no idea that a helicopter was now following Eric. Until now, the undercover agent's dealings had only been with Eric, so the police didn't know who was actually printing the fake notes, or who they were about to catch. Then the police set a trap. The undercover agent told Eric that a friend of his also wanted $100,000 in fake notes, and asked Eric to bring the supplier to the meeting location. Eric immediately asked Frank to bring another $100,000, which Frank agreed to deliver to Eric's friend's house, where the exchange was going to take place. But as Frank arrived and was parking his car, he started getting a strange feeling. At that time, a helicopter was flying high above, which Frank couldn't see. To avoid any trouble, Frank drove the car straight inside the garage, so that no one could see him or the money. May 23, 2012. 5 a.m. Frank and his girlfriend were sleeping at home when they suddenly heard a knock on the door. As Frank opened the door, he saw police standing there, asking to come inside. Frank's girlfriend had no idea what was going on or why the police were at the door. She was terrified, but Frank told her to stay quiet and let the police do their job. Suddenly, the police handcuffed Frank and started searching the entire house. During the search, police found some guns, which were licensed, but they also found UV pens used to check counterfeit notes, marijuana, and fake dollar printing plates worth millions of dollars. At the time of arrest, 12 Canadian police officers and 2 U.S. Secret Service agents were present. They seized everything on the spot and took Frank into custody. All these officers were shocked to see such a large quantity of fake notes and immediately began interrogating him. At first, Frank refused to say anything, but when the police told him that they had arrested his girlfriend and were going to seize his house. Frank confessed. Frank told the police that his girlfriend had nothing to do with it because she didn't know anything. He claimed full responsibility for everything. Frank had been smart from the beginning, and he knew that one day he would get caught. That's why, before confessing, he had done all his calculations. Frank believed that even if he got caught, he would get no more than 6 to 7 years in prison, and in Canada, he would only have to serve 1/3 of his sentence, around 14 to 15 months, and he could easily manage that. Anyway, that much calculations. There were still a few things Frank had overlooked, one of them being the 2 Secret Service agents who were present at 5 a.m. at the time of his arrest. Frank had no idea that they were Secret Service agents, and during the interrogation, when both of them entered the room, they told Frank that he would be extradited to the US. Hearing this, Frank became extremely scared because he had never even considered this possibility. He believed he would get away with a minor sentence under the Canadian legal system. After being handed over to America, 3 different charges were pressed against Frank. The first charge was possessing fake note printing plates, which were found at his girlfriend's house. The second charge was delivering counterfeit notes to Eric. The third charge was for printing the fake notes. Each charge carried a sentence of 20 years, which meant Frank was now looking at 60 years in prison. Frank asked the Secret Service agents, "What's the maximum sentence I could get?" To which they replied that being a Canadian citizen, the maximum punishment he'd receive would be 9 years. Anyway, Frank was sent to jail, where after serving some time, he was supposed to be extradited to the US, but Frank was lucky to have a great lawyer who immediately began efforts to get the entire case dismissed. Frank's lawyer argued in court that the police surveillance camera had only shown Frank entering Eric's garage, but they did not see any bag in Frank's hand that contained cash, nor did they see him handing any such bag to Eric. He also stated that the warrant against Frank had been issued illegally, and the evidence presented in court was not valid. With this argument, a ray of hope began to shine, and it seemed like the judge might dismiss the case. That's when Frank told his lawyer to negotiate with the defense lawyer to not demand his extradition to the US, and if they agreed, he would not pursue getting the case dismissed, since even the defense lawyer wanted to win the case, and Frank would be sentenced lightly in Canada instead of dying in an American prison. They agreed to the deal. After serving 6 weeks in jail, Frank was released on bail of $10,000, and he started working in construction. During this time, his lawyer continued strengthening the case. After getting out of jail, Frank constantly felt that he was being followed and that his phone was being tapped, so he became extremely cautious. He didn't talk to anyone about the counterfeit notes, and never returned to the garage where the fake dollars were printed. Meanwhile, the police were looking for the Heidelberg printing machine used to make the fake notes. On the other side, Frank listed the machine for sale on a website. One evening in September 2012, Frank received an email saying someone wanted to buy the machine. This person was an undercover police agent, but Frank felt something was off and decided not to proceed with the deal. 1 year later, the defense lawyer made a final offer to Frank's lawyer. If Frank told the court everything truthfully, he would get only 3 years in prison, of which he'd only have to serve 6 months. This was a great deal for Frank, but he refused. The trial resumed. Before the trial began, Frank and his lawyer arrived in court. Just before it started, Frank asked his lawyer, "If I had $200 million, could we do something?" The lawyer was stunned and said, "Are you joking?" But once he realized that Frank was serious, the lawyer said, "Yes, with that much, a lot can be done." Frank now told his lawyer that he would hand over all the $200 million in counterfeit cash and the printing machine to the court, but in return, his sentence should be reduced to just 6 weeks, which he had already served. His car should be returned, and his girlfriend's house should not be seized. Eventually, the court agreed to this deal, and Frank was only fined $350 for drug possession. The defense lawyer had no other option. However, something was still brewing in his mind, because until Frank handed over the fake cash to the court, he was not officially cleared. The handover date for the cash was set for January 31st, although the court couldn't keep him in jail since he was the one bringing the cash. This gave police a full month to monitor Frank's every move and possibly find the cash. If the police managed to find the $200 million before Frank handed it over, the court could cancel the deal, and he would be extradited to the US. since Frank didn't want to drag his girlfriend or the farmer whose garage he rented into trouble. He never returned to that location, but he had already prepared for this situation. 2 months before he told his lawyer about the cash, Frank had called a friend, who arrived at the garage with a truck. They loaded the $200 million in counterfeit dollars and the printing machine into the truck and parked it in a hotel parking lot. People Frank had hired began monitoring the truck in shifts, 24 hours a day, ensuring it didn't come under anyone's notice because the truck was secured with just one lock, and no one knew what was inside. The most important task given to them was make sure this truck doesn't attract any attention. Finally, on January 31st, 2014, Frank went to the nearest local police station and told them to follow him so he could hand over the cash. After reaching the hotel parking lot, as Frank opened the truck doors, the police were stunned. In front of them stood a mountain of fake cash and the Heidelberg printing machine, both loaded inside the truck. Between the time the deal with the court was signed and the cash handover, the Secret Service agents had also investigated the Arjogens company, where Frank had ordered the paper for printing the fake notes. Based on that order, police learned that Frank had not just printed $200 million, but $250 million, out of which $50 million had already been circulated in the market. But since the court deal had already been signed, they couldn't do anything. Frank had cleverly kept the location of the cash secret until the handover date, and now he was free both from Canadian and American courts, because the investigation against Frank was now closed. Although the court started a fresh investigation to catch the counterfeit racket, as they believed one man could not have printed so many notes alone. But Frank told the court that he had done it all alone. How he arranged the printing machine and the paper. He also said, if this cash had been printed by a criminal organization, they would have used it to buy people or eliminate them, instead of handing it over to the court, and that was absolutely true. In the end, Frank left his criminal life because he had already earned $15 million by selling $50 million worth of fake notes, and that was more than enough to live a lavish and luxurious life. Frank now works as a private consultant for governments, helping them with anti-counterfeit training and supporting counterfeit-related investigations. Even today, Frank still has millions of dollars, which he earned through illegal means, but due to his negotiation skills, he was acquitted by the courts and became the most successful counterfeiter in the world. He made the most money ever using fake notes, served just 6 weeks in jail, and paid a fine of only $350 to walk away from the case. And this story proves one thing: those who get caught after committing a crime definitely make some mistake, otherwise they too can get away. Let us know in the comments section how you liked this story. Like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.